The sterile smell of antiseptic burned Brianna Mitchell's nostrils as she stared at the contract in front of her. Her hands trembled, making the pages shake. Outside the window of this expensive lawyer's office, the city sprawled below, indifferent to her desperation. Inside, her mother lay in a hospital bed 15 blocks away, her body shutting down a little more each day. The cancer was winning and Brianna was losing everything. She wore her only decent dress today, a bright red one she'd bought from a thrift store 3 years ago for a job interview that never led anywhere. Her dark brown skin seemed to glow against the vibrant color, but she felt anything but vibrant inside. She felt hollow, scraped clean of pride and options. "Miss Mitchell, I need to emphasize the terms again," the lawyer said, adjusting his expensive glasses. His name was Mr. Peterson, and he seemed uncomfortable with her presence in this gleaming office. "You will be a gestational surrogate for Mr. Julian Hayes. The embryo will be created using his genetic material and a donor egg. You will carry the child for 9 months, deliver, and then relinquish all parental rights. In exchange, you will receive $500,000. $250,000 will be paid immediately upon medical confirmation of pregnancy. The remaining amount will be paid after delivery. $500,000. The number spun in Brianna's head like a prayer. That amount would cover her mother's experimental treatment, the one the insurance company had denied 3 times. That amount would pay off the medical bills that had piled up like accusations of her inadequacy. That amount would give her mother a chance to live. But the cost was so much more than money. At 26 years old, Brianna had never been with a man. It wasn't religion or morality that kept her virginity intact. It was circumstances. After her father left when she was 12, she'd become her mother's caretaker. Her mother had early-onset arthritis that progressively worsened. Brianna worked 2 jobs through high school, went to community college at night, and never had time for dating or romance. Then the cancer diagnosis came 2 years ago, and any possibility of a normal life evaporated. Now she was signing papers to have a stranger's baby implanted in her body. The procedure wouldn't technically take her virginity, the doctor had explained during her preliminary consultation. It was a medical procedure, sterile and clinical. But it felt like she was selling the last thing she had left of herself. "The medical procedures will begin immediately after signing," Mr. Peterson continued. "Mr. Hayes has requested complete discretion. You will not speak to the media or anyone outside your immediate family about this arrangement. You will live in accommodations provided by Mr. Hayes during the pregnancy to ensure proper care and monitoring." Brianna nodded, barely hearing him. Her mother's voice echoed in her memory from last night's hospital visit. "Baby, I don't want you to sacrifice yourself for me. I've lived my life. You deserve to live yours." But what kind of life could she live watching her mother die? What kind of daughter would she be if she didn't try everything to save the woman who'd given up everything for her? "I need you to initial here, here, and here," Mr. Peterson pointed to multiple spots on the document. "And sign at the bottom." Brianna picked up the expensive pen, feeling its weight. She thought about Julian Hayes, the billionaire CEO she'd never met. She'd seen his picture in magazines at the grocery store checkout. He was handsome in that distant, untouchable way of rich people. Square jaw, dark hair touched with gray at the temples, sharp blue eyes that seemed to see through everything. He was 42 years old, never married, and apparently needed an heir for his massive business empire. The rumors said he was cold and calculating. That he'd built his fortune in commercial real estate by being ruthless. That he valued efficiency over emotion. Brianna didn't care about any of that. He was her mother's only hope. She pressed the pen to paper and began initialing. Each mark felt like she was erasing a piece of herself. Initial here, goodbye to dreams of falling in love naturally. Initial here, goodbye to the fantasy of starting a family the traditional way. Initial here, goodbye to the girl she used to be. When she signed her name at the bottom, her hand was steady. She'd made her choice. She would do this for her mother. She would be brave. "Excellent." Mr. Peterson gathered the papers. "Mr. Hayes would like to meet you briefly before the medical procedures begin. He's waiting in the conference room next door." Brianna's heart stuttered. She hadn't expected to meet him today. She hadn't prepared herself mentally. But she nodded and stood, smoothing down her red dress with sweaty palms. Mr. Peterson led her down a hallway lined with expensive art. Everything in this building screamed wealth and power, things Brianna had never possessed. He opened a large wooden door and gestured for her to enter. The conference room was enormous, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a view of the entire city. And there, standing with his back to her, looking out at his domain, was Julian Hayes. He turned as she entered and Brianna's breath caught. The magazines hadn't captured him properly. In person he was more intense, more present. He wore a navy blue suit that probably cost more than her car, and his eyes, those sharp blue eyes, fixed on her with an expression she couldn't read. "Miss Mitchell," he said, his voice deep and controlled. He walked toward her and she noticed he was tall, at least 6 feet. "Thank you for agreeing to this arrangement." "Thank you for the opportunity, Mr. Hayes," Brianna said, proud that her voice didn't shake. "I'm grateful for your offer." He studied her face for a long moment and she wondered what he saw. A desperate woman? A convenient solution to his problem? Or maybe he saw nothing at all beyond a means to an end. "Your mother is Diane Mitchell, correct? Diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer." "Yes, sir. I've already arranged for her transfer to St. Catherine's Medical Center. They have the best oncology department in the state. Dr. Raymond Chen will oversee her treatment personally. He's the leading specialist in experimental cancer treatments." Tears burned Brianna's eyes. It was happening so fast. "Thank you. Thank you so much." "The treatment begins tomorrow morning," Julian continued, his tone businesslike. "I've taken the liberty of having your belongings moved from your apartment to the guest house on my property. You'll live there for the duration of the pregnancy. My chef will prepare all your meals according to the nutritionist's guidelines. A car and driver will be available whenever you need to visit your mother." Brianna's mind reeled. Her belongings moved already? They were that confident she'd sign? But she pushed down the flutter of unease. This was kindness, she told herself. This was help. She would accept it with gratitude. "That's very generous, Mr. Hayes. It's practical, Miss Mitchell. I want to ensure the best possible outcome for this pregnancy." He paused and something flickered across his face. "I want you to know that I understand this is not an easy thing you're doing. I respect your sacrifice." The word, sacrifice, hung in the air between them. Brianna blinked back tears. "My mother is worth it. She's worth everything." Something in Julian's expression softened, just for a second. Then the businesslike mask returned. "The medical team is waiting downstairs. They'll perform a complete physical examination today, run blood work and prepare you for the procedure. Do you have any questions?" Brianna had 1,000 questions, but none of them seemed appropriate. She shook her head. "No, sir." "You don't have to call me sir," he said. "Julian is fine." "Okay, Julian." He nodded once, then turned back to the window. "Mr. Peterson will escort you to the medical center. I'll be informed of the examination results." Brianna understood she was being dismissed. She turned to leave, but his voice stopped her. "Miss Mitchell?" She turned back. "Yes. Your mother will receive the best care available. I promise you that." The sincerity in his voice surprised her. This cold businessman suddenly sounded almost human. "Thank you, Julian. I accept your promise with all my heart." As Mr. Peterson led her back through the hallway and down to the medical center in the building's basement level, Brianna felt like she was in a dream. Everything was happening so quickly. Within hours, her mother would be in a top hospital receiving treatment. Within days, she would undergo the surrogacy procedure. Within months, she would be pregnant with a stranger's child. The medical center was state-of-the-art, filled with equipment Brianna didn't recognize. A team of 3 doctors and 2 nurses greeted her warmly. They were professional and kind, explaining every step of what would happen. "We're going to perform a comprehensive physical examination," Dr. Sarah Brighton, a woman in her 50s with gentle eyes, explained. "This includes blood work, ultrasounds, genetic screening, and a complete reproductive system evaluation. It's standard procedure for all surrogates. Nothing to worry about." Brianna changed into a hospital gown and tried not to think about how exposed she felt. The examination took nearly 3 hours. They drew what felt like gallons of blood, took dozens of images of her body, asked hundreds of questions about her medical history, her family's medical history, her lifestyle. Then came the part she'd been dreading. The reproductive examination. Dr. Brighton was gentle and professional, but Brianna still felt her face burn with embarrassment. After several minutes, Dr. Brighton paused. She looked at the ultrasound screen, then at Brianna, then back at the screen. She called over another doctor, Dr. James Walsh, and they conferred in low voices. "Miss Mitchell," Dr. Brighton said carefully, "I need to ask you something personal. Have you ever been sexually active?" Brianna's stomach dropped. "No," she whispered. "Never." The doctors exchanged glances. Dr. Walsh cleared his throat. "Miss Mitchell, you're a virgin. That's not mentioned anywhere in your medical history or application." Shame flooded through Brianna. Would this disqualify her? Would they reject her and send her mother back to the overcrowded public hospital where she was slowly dying? I'm sorry. I didn't know I was supposed to mention it. Does it matter? You said the procedure wouldn't, change that. It doesn't disqualify you medically, Dr. Brighton said gently. But it's unusual. Most surrogates are women who have already had children. Mr. Hayes specifically requested a surrogate with previous successful pregnancies, though we had to make an exception given the time constraints of your mother's condition. I can still do this, right? Brianna's voice cracked. Please. My mother needs this treatment. We need to inform Mr. Hayes, Dr. Walsh said. This is his decision to make. They left Brianna alone in the examination room, still in her hospital gown, while they went to make the call. She sat on the table, paper crinkling beneath her, and felt the weight of her inexperience pressing down on her. Of course someone like Julian Hayes would want an experienced surrogate. Of course her virginity would be a problem. Nothing in her life ever went smoothly. 15 minutes passed. Each minute felt like an hour. Finally, the door opened, and to Brianna's shock, Julian Hayes himself walked in, followed by the two doctors. His eyes met hers, and she saw something there she hadn't seen before. Surprise, yes. But also something that looked almost like concern. Miss Mitchell, he said quietly. The doctors informed me of their finding. Brianna wanted to disappear. She wanted to sink through the floor. I'm sorry. I should have told you. But I can still do this. I'm healthy. The doctor said I'm medically qualified. Please don't change your mind about helping my mother. Julian was quiet for a long moment. The silence stretched so thin Brianna thought it might snap. Then he did something that stunned her completely. I'm not changing my mind about your mother's treatment, he said firmly. Dr. Chin is probably admitting her to St. Catherine's as we speak. That treatment will proceed regardless of whether you proceed with the surrogacy. Brianna's mind went blank. What? Your mother will receive the full course of treatment, all expenses paid, regardless of this arrangement. Julian's voice was steady, certain. I'm releasing you from the surrogacy contract, Miss Mitchell. You don't have to do this. Do you think Brianna should accept Julian's offer to walk away, or should she insist on keeping their agreement? What would you do in her situation? Drop your thoughts in the comments below and subscribe to see what happens next in this emotional journey. Brianna stared at Julian Hayes, unable to process his words. The fluorescent lights of the medical center seemed too bright, too harsh. She clutched the hospital gown tighter around herself, feeling vulnerable and confused. I don't understand, she finally managed to say. You're still going to help my mother? Even if I don't go through with the surrogacy? Yes. Julian's answer was simple, direct. No hesitation. But why? The question burst from her before she could stop it. You don't know me. You don't owe me anything. This was a business arrangement. Julian glanced at the doctors, who took the hint and quietly left the room. When they were alone, he moved to lean against the counter, maintaining a respectful distance from where she sat on the examination table. Because it's the right thing to do, he said, his blue eyes steady on hers. You're a 26-year-old woman who's never been with a man, and you were willing to carry a stranger's baby to save your mother's life. That level of sacrifice, that kind of love, it deserves respect. It deserves help without strings attached. Tears spilled down Brianna's cheeks before she could stop them. In her entire life, no one outside her mother had ever shown her kindness without expecting something in return. Everyone wanted something. But here was one of the richest men in the country, offering her freedom from an obligation that would benefit him. I don't know what to say, she whispered. You don't have to say anything. I'll have my lawyer draw up a new agreement. Your mother's treatment, fully funded. You can go back to your life. But Brianna's mind was racing. Yes, she'd been terrified of the surrogacy. Yes, her virginity made the whole situation more complicated emotionally. But she'd made a promise. She'd signed a contract. And more than that, Julian had already done so much. He'd moved her mother to the best hospital, arranged for the top specialist, started treatment that was probably already underway. How could she accept all that and give nothing in return? Her mother had raised her to be many things, but a person who took without giving back wasn't one of them. No, Brianna said, her voice stronger now. I want to go through with it. Julian's eyebrows rose. Miss Mitchell, you don't have to do this. I'm releasing you from the contract. I know, and I'm grateful. More grateful than I can express. Brianna wiped her tears with the back of her hand. But you held up your end of the bargain. You've already started my mother's treatment. The least I can do is hold up mine. I made you a promise and I keep my promises. This isn't about keeping promises, Julian said, his voice gentle in a way she hadn't expected from him. This is about you being forced into a situation by circumstances beyond your control. I won't take advantage of that. You're not taking advantage. I'm choosing this. Brianna took a deep breath. My mother is probably in that hospital right now, getting the treatment that might save her life. Treatment she couldn't get anywhere else. Treatment you made possible. How can I accept that gift and walk away from my commitment to you? Julian studied her for a long moment. You have more integrity than most people I've met in the business world. I just know right from wrong. My mother taught me that. Brianna managed a small smile. Please let me do this. Let me give you what you need. You've given me what I need most in the world, a chance to save my mother. I want to give you what you need too. What I need is an heir, Julian said quietly. A child to inherit the company I've built. But I don't need it at the cost of someone's well-being. You're not costing me my well-being. You're giving me hope. Brianna's voice was steady now, certain. I want to do this, Julian. Please accept my commitment with the same grace I'm accepting your kindness. Something shifted in Julian's expression. The hard businessman facade cracked, revealing something more human underneath. He nodded slowly. If you're certain. I'm certain. Then we proceed as planned. But I want to make some changes to the arrangement. He pushed off from the counter and walked to the examination room's small desk, pulling out his phone. I'm having my lawyer add clauses to the contract. You'll receive full medical care, not just for the pregnancy but for 5 years after. You'll have access to counseling services if you need them. And I'm doubling the payment. You don't have to do that, Brianna protested. I know I don't have to. I want to. Julian's eyes met hers. You're showing me extraordinary trust, Miss Mitchell. The least I can do is ensure you're taken care of properly. Brianna felt fresh tears threatening. Kindness was such a rare thing in her life that she didn't know how to handle it when it appeared. Thank you. I accept with all my gratitude. Good. Julian typed something into his phone. Now get dressed. I'll have the car take you to St. Catherine's to see your mother. The doctors can complete the remaining tests tomorrow. 20 minutes later, Brianna sat in the back of a sleek black car, driven by a professional chauffeur named Bernard who was polite and quiet. She changed back into her red dress, but she felt different somehow. Like the woman who'd put on that dress this morning wasn't quite the same woman wearing it now. The city passed by outside the tinted windows. People rushed along sidewalks, oblivious to the small miracles happening in their midst. Brianna thought about Julian Hayes, trying to understand him. The media painted him as cold and ruthless, but the man she'd met today had shown her unexpected compassion. Maybe people were more complicated than their reputations suggested. St. Catherine's Medical Center was even more impressive than Julian's office building. All glass and steel and modern architecture. Bernard escorted her inside, where a hospital administrator was waiting to guide her to her mother's room. Mrs. Mitchell has been admitted to our VIP wing, the administrator, a kind-faced woman named Mrs. Roberts, explained as they rode the elevator to the 8th floor. She has a private suite. Dr. Chin examined her an hour ago and has already begun the preliminary treatment protocols. The VIP wing looked more like a luxury hotel than a hospital. Soft carpet, tasteful artwork on the walls, warm lighting. They stopped at a door and Mrs. Roberts knocked softly before opening it. Mama, Brianna breathed. Her mother was sitting up in a large, comfortable-looking bed, wearing a soft blue hospital gown. She looked tired, yes, but there was color in her cheeks that hadn't been there this morning. And 4 drip fed into her arm, delivering the life-saving medicine that had been out of reach for so long. Brianna, baby, Diane Mitchell's face lit up when she saw her daughter. What on earth is happening? They came to the public hospital with an ambulance and brought me here. They said my treatment was approved, that some private benefactor was paying for everything. Did you do something? Brianna crossed the room and carefully hugged her mother, mindful of the 4-line. I made an arrangement, Mama. A good arrangement. You're going to get better now. What kind of arrangement? Diane's eyes were sharp despite her illness. She knew her daughter too well. Brianna pulled back and sat on the edge of the bed, taking her mother's hand. The hand was thinner than it should be, the bones too prominent. But it was warm, alive. That was what mattered. I'm going to be a surrogate for a man who needs a baby. He's paying for your treatment in exchange. Diane's eyes widened. Brianna, no. You can't, you shouldn't have to. Mama, stop. Brianna squeezed her hand gently. It's already done. The contract is signed. And more than that, I want to do this. The man Julian Hayes, he's been nothing but kind. He's even offered to let me out of the agreement and still pay for your treatment, but I won't do that. I keep my promises. You're talking about Julian Hayes? The billionaire. Diane looked stunned. Baby, that man is in a completely different world from us. I know. But he's a good man, Mama. I can tell. Brianna wasn't sure why she felt so confident about that assessment. They'd only met briefly. But there had been something in his eyes when he'd released her from the contract, something genuine. He's making sure you get the best care. That's all that matters. Diane searched her daughter's face. Are you sure about this? Really sure? I'm sure. And you're okay with carrying a baby for him? Brianna thought about her answer carefully. Was she okay with it? The truth was complicated. She was scared, nervous, uncertain about what pregnancy would feel like, what it would mean. But she was also grateful, relieved, hopeful. I'm okay with it, Mama. I promise. Diane pulled her close again, and they held each other while the evening light filtered through the hospital windows. You're the strongest person I know, Diane whispered. When did my little girl become so brave? I learned from the best. They talked for hours, Brianna filling her mother in on the details she was allowed to share. The guest house where she'd be living, the medical care she'd receive, the timeline for the procedure. Diane asked questions, worried questions, mother questions. But underneath it all, Brianna could see the hope dawning in her mother's eyes. Real hope, not the desperate kind they'd been clinging to for the past 2 years. Around 9 o'clock, a nurse came in to check Diane's vitals and reminded them that the patient needed rest. Brianna kissed her mother's forehead and promised to visit tomorrow. Bernard was waiting downstairs to drive her to Julian's property. The guest house, he'd called it. Brianna had no idea what to expect. The drive took them out of the city center into an area where houses sat behind gates and walls. Old money, Brianna thought. The kind of neighborhood where people measured wealth in generations, not dollars. Bernard turned through a set of iron gates that opened automatically. The driveway curved through manicured grounds, lit by elegant landscaping lights. In the distance, Brianna could see a massive main house, all stone and glass and modern design. But Bernard didn't drive to the main house. Instead, he followed a side path to a smaller building nestled among trees. The guest house, Miss Mitchell, Bernard said, parking the car. Your belongings have been moved into the master bedroom. The kitchen is fully stocked. If you need anything at all, there's an intercom system that connects to the main house staff. Brianna stepped out of the car and stared at the guest house. It was bigger than any place she'd ever lived. 2 stories, large windows, a covered porch with comfortable-looking furniture. Bernard handed her a key card. The door unlocks with this. Have a good evening, Miss Mitchell. Thank you, Bernard. He nodded and drove away, leaving Brianna alone in front of her temporary home. She walked up to the door, swiped the key card, and stepped inside. The interior was beautiful. An open floor plan with a living room, dining area, and modern kitchen. Comfortable furniture in soft greens and blues, real artwork on the walls, thick rugs on hardwood floors. A staircase led to the second floor. Brianna climbed the stairs and found 3 bedrooms. The master bedroom, as Bernard had said, contained her belongings. All 3 of her boxes, looking pitiful against the backdrop of the huge room with its king-size bed, walk-in closet, and private bathroom. She sat on the edge of the bed, feeling the weight of the day settling over her. This morning she'd been a broke, desperate woman living in a tiny apartment. Tonight she was living in luxury, her mother was getting life-saving treatment, and she'd committed to carrying a stranger's baby. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. This is Julian. Just checking that you arrived safely. If you need anything, call this number anytime. Brianna stared at the message. He was checking on her. This billionaire CEO was taking time out of his evening to make sure she was okay. She typed back. I'm here. Thank you for everything. You've given me more than I can ever repay. His response came quickly. You're giving me something invaluable in return. Get some rest. Tomorrow we start preparing for the procedure. Brianna set her phone down and lay back on the impossibly soft bed. Through the window she could see stars, more than she'd ever seen from her old apartment in the city. Tomorrow her new life would really begin. Tomorrow she would start the process that would change everything. But tonight, for the first time in 2 years, she felt something she'd almost forgotten. Hope. Morning sunlight poured through the large windows of the guest house, waking Brianna earlier than usual. For a confused moment, she didn't recognize her surroundings. The soft sheets, the spacious room, the peaceful silence. Then memory returned, and with it, a flutter of anxiety mixed with anticipation. She showered in the luxurious bathroom, marveling at the water pressure and the array of expensive toiletries that had been provided. Someone had thought of everything from shampoo to body lotion to a plush bathrobe hanging on the door. After dressing in jeans and a bright green t-shirt, one of her few casual outfits, Brianna went downstairs to explore the kitchen. She was surprised to find it already occupied. A woman in her 50s stood at the stove, wearing a simple white uniform. She turned when Brianna entered and smiled warmly. "Good morning, Miss Mitchell. I'm Helen, the head chef for the property. Mr. Hayes asked me to prepare your breakfast and explain the meal arrangements." "Oh, you didn't have to do that," Brianna said, feeling awkward. "I can cook for myself." "I'm sure you can, but Mr. Hayes wants to ensure you receive proper nutrition during the pre-procedure phase and throughout the pregnancy." Helen gestured to a small table set for one. "Please sit. I've made a vegetable omelet, whole grain toast, fresh fruit, and there's orange juice or herbal tea." The smell was incredible, making Brianna's stomach growl. She realized she hadn't eaten since lunch yesterday, too nervous to have dinner. "This is too much." "Not at all. This is my job and I'm happy to do it." Helen set a plate in front of her. "I'll be coming by each morning, afternoon, and evening to prepare your meals. If you have any preferences or dislikes, please let me know. The nutritionist has provided guidelines, but there's plenty of room for variety." Brianna took a bite of the omelet and nearly moaned. It was the best thing she'd ever tasted. "This is amazing." Helen beamed. "I'm glad you like it. Now eat up. You have a busy day ahead." As if on cue, Brianna's phone buzzed with a text from Julian. "Dr. Brighton will be at the guest house at 10 a.m. to go over the procedure timeline and answer any questions. Take your time with breakfast." Brianna typed back. "Thank you. I will." Helen busied herself cleaning up the kitchen while Brianna ate. The chef was friendly but not intrusive, respecting Brianna's space while making her feel welcome. It was a balance Brianna appreciated. After breakfast, Brianna called the hospital to check on her mother. The nurse who answered reported that Diane had slept well and was about to start another round of treatment. Relief washed through Brianna. It was really happening. Her mother was getting help. At 10 o'clock precisely, the doorbell rang. Brianna opened it to find Dr. Brighton standing there with a warm smile, carrying a leather medical bag. "Good morning, Brianna. May I come in?" "Of course." Brianna stepped aside, still not quite used to having a doctor make house calls. They settled in the comfortable living room and Dr. Brighton pulled out a tablet. "I want to go over the timeline for the embryo transfer procedure. We'll be using in vitro fertilization, which means we'll fertilize the donor egg with Mr. Hayes' genetic material in the laboratory, let the embryo develop for a few days, and then transfer it to your uterus." "Okay," Brianna said, trying to follow along. "Before we can do that, we need to prepare your body. You'll be taking hormone medications for the next 2 weeks to prepare your uterine lining for implantation. I'll be monitoring you closely during this time. The medications can cause side effects like mood swings, fatigue, or nausea, but they're usually manageable." Brianna nodded, taking it all in. It sounded so clinical, so medical, which was good. She needed to think of this as a medical procedure, not as something more emotionally complex. Dr. Brighton walked her through every step of the process, answering questions Brianna didn't even know she had. The doctor was patient and thorough, never making Brianna feel stupid for asking basic questions. "One more thing," Dr. Brighton said as she prepared to leave. "Mr. Hayes wanted me to assure you that you'll have full autonomy over your body throughout this process. If at any point you feel uncomfortable or want to stop, you can. No questions asked, no penalties." Brianna was touched by the gesture, even though she had no intention of backing out. "Please tell him thank you. You can tell him yourself. He's requested to see you this afternoon at the main house, if you're comfortable with that." Brianna's heart skipped a beat. She'd see Julian again today. "What time?" 2 o'clock. "Just follow the main path from your guest house. Bernard will be waiting to escort you." After Dr. Brighton left, Brianna spent the rest of the morning exploring the guest house grounds. There was a small garden area behind the house, a patio with a grill, and a path that led through the trees toward the main house. Everything was so beautiful, so peaceful. Brianna couldn't help but compare it to the cramped, noisy apartment complex she'd left behind. This felt like a different world entirely. At 1:45, she changed into the red dress again, the only formal outfit she owned. She brushed her hair until it shone, applied a little makeup, and tried to calm her nerves. This was just a meeting. Just a conversation with the man who was helping her save her mother's life and had shown her unexpected kindness. So why did her hands shake as she locked the guest house door and followed the path to the main house? Bernard was indeed waiting at a side entrance to the massive stone building. He greeted her with a respectful nod and led her inside. The interior of Julian's home was even more impressive than the guest house. High ceilings, modern art, sleek furniture. But it didn't feel cold or sterile. There were warm touches, books on shelves, a guitar in one corner, photographs in simple frames. Bernard led her to a study where Julian sat behind a large desk, reading something on his computer. He looked up when they entered and stood immediately. "Brianna, thank you for coming." He was dressed more casually than yesterday, in dark slacks and a crisp blue button-down shirt with the sleeves rolled up. It made him look more approachable, more human. "Thank you for inviting me." Bernard discreetly left, closing the door behind him. Julian gestured to a comfortable chair across from his desk. "Please sit. I wanted to check in with you, see how you're settling into the guest house." "It's wonderful. More than wonderful. Thank you." Brianna sat, folding her hands in her lap. "And thank you for sending Dr. Brighton this morning." She explained everything very clearly. "Good. I want you to feel informed and comfortable every step of the way." Julian leaned back in his chair. "I also wanted to discuss the practical arrangements. You mentioned you were working 2 jobs. I've arranged for financial compensation to cover lost wages during the pregnancy, in addition to the surrogacy fee. You shouldn't have to worry about money while you're doing this." Brianna blinked back tears. Every time she thought Julian had done enough, he offered more. "That's incredibly generous. It's fair. You're giving up a lot for this arrangement." He paused, his blue eyes serious. "I want to be clear about something, Brianna. This is a business arrangement, yes, but that doesn't mean you're just a means to an end. You're a person and you deserve to be treated with respect and care. If you need anything at all, you tell me." "Understood." "Understood," Brianna whispered. "I accept your offer with gratitude." They talked for over an hour, covering logistics and details. Julian wanted her to have access to a car and driver whenever she needed to visit her mother or run errands. He suggested she use the property's home gym and pool to stay healthy during the pregnancy. He even offered to set up a home office space if she wanted to pursue online courses or work from home during the pregnancy. "I never finished my college degree," Brianna admitted. "I had to drop out when my mother got sick." "What were you studying?" "Business administration. I wanted to run my own small company someday. Maybe a catering service or event planning business." She laughed softly. "Seems silly now." "It's not silly at all." Julian's expression was thoughtful. "If you want to continue your education during the pregnancy, I'll arrange for it. Online courses, tutors, whatever you need." "I couldn't ask you to do that." "You're not asking. I'm offering. You're putting your life on hold for 9 months to help me. The least I can do is help you pursue your goals during that time." He stood and walked to the window, looking out at his property. "I believe in investing in people, Brianna. Not just financially but in their potential. You have dreams and they shouldn't be deferred forever just because life got hard." Brianna felt her throat tighten with emotion. No one had ever talked about her potential before. No one had ever suggested her dreams were worth investing in. "Why are you being so kind to me?" Julian turned back to face her. "Because kindness costs me nothing and might mean everything to you. And because—" He hesitated, as if choosing his words carefully. "Because you remind me that there are still good people in the world. People who keep their promises. People who sacrifice for those they love. That's rare and it deserves to be honored." They stood there for a moment, the air between them charged with something Brianna didn't quite understand. Then Julian glanced at his watch and the spell broke. "I have a conference call in 10 minutes, unfortunately. But I'd like to invite you to have dinner at the main house tomorrow evening. Nothing formal, just a chance to talk more. Get to know each other beyond the contractual arrangement." "I'd like that," Brianna heard herself say. "Good. 7 o'clock. He smiled and it transformed his face. The hard businessman disappeared, replaced by someone warmer, more genuine. 7 o'clock, Brianna agreed. Bernard appeared to escort her back to the guest house. As Brianna walked back along the tree-lined path, she felt her world shifting in ways she hadn't anticipated. Julian Hayes wasn't what she'd expected. He wasn't cold or calculating. He was thoughtful, generous, and kind. And that realization scared her more than anything else. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of hormone medications, doctor visits, and unexpected moments of connection with Julian Hayes. True to his word, he'd arranged for Brianna to enroll in online business courses. Every morning after Dr. Brighton's checkup, Brianna would spend several hours studying, her mind grateful for something to focus on besides the upcoming procedure. But the evenings were what she looked forward to most. Dinner with Julian had become a regular occurrence. That first dinner, she'd been nervous, wearing her red dress again because it was still her only nice outfit. Julian had noticed. The next day, Bernard had arrived at the guest house with multiple shopping bags from expensive boutiques. Inside were dresses, casual clothes, shoes, all in Brianna's size. The note attached read, "You need options beyond one dress. Please accept these with no obligation. Julian." Brianna had stared at the beautiful clothes, torn between gratitude and discomfort at accepting so much. But then she remembered Julian's words about accepting kindness, and his insistence that she deserved care and respect. So she'd called him to say thank you, her voice thick with emotion. "You're welcome," he'd said simply. "I look forward to seeing you in them." Now, on a Thursday evening 2 weeks after she'd moved into the guest house, Brianna walked to the main house wearing a bright blue dress that brought out the warm tones in her dark skin. She felt beautiful, confident in a way she rarely had before. Julian greeted her at the door himself, something he'd started doing instead of having Bernard escort her. He wore dark jeans and a casual green shirt, and his eyes lit up when he saw her. "You look lovely," he said. "Thank you. The dress is beautiful." Brianna followed him to the dining room, where Helen had prepared another incredible meal. They'd fallen into an easy rhythm during these dinners. Julian would ask about her day, her studies, her mother's progress. Brianna would ask about his work, his company, his life. Slowly they were building something that felt like friendship. "Dr. Chen called me today," Julian said as they started on Helen's famous roasted chicken. "He's very optimistic about your mother's response to treatment. The tumor markers are trending downward." Brianna's eyes filled with tears. "Really? He didn't mention that during my visit today. He wanted to wait until he was certain of the trend. But yes, she's responding well." Julian's smile was genuine, reaching his eyes. "I'm happy for you, Brianna. And for her. It's because of you. All of this is because of you." Brianna wiped her eyes with her napkin. "I don't know how to thank you properly. You're thanking me by being here, by keeping your commitment despite having an out." Julian took a sip of his wine, his expression thoughtful. "Can I ask you something personal?" "Of course. Why did you really insist on going through with the surrogacy? And please don't say it's just about keeping promises. There's more to it than that, isn't there?" Brianna considered her answer carefully. These dinners had taught her that Julian appreciated honesty, even when it was uncomfortable. "You're right, there is more. I insist on going through with it because accepting charity without giving anything back makes me feel small. My whole life I've had to take handouts, accept help because I had no choice. From social services when my dad left, from welfare when my mother couldn't work, from hospital payment plans and charity care. I'm tired of being the person who only takes. Just once, I wanted to be someone who could give something valuable in return." Julian set down his fork, his full attention on her. "You think carrying my child is the only way you can give back? It's the only thing I have that someone like you would want." Brianna met his eyes. "I don't have money or connections or business expertise. But I have this. I can give you the child you need. That makes me feel less like a charity case and more like a partner in an agreement between equals." "But we're not equals, and I don't mean that in a bad way." Julian leaned forward. "I have wealth and resources. You have courage and integrity. Those things aren't less valuable just because society doesn't put a price tag on them. Maybe not, but they don't save lives either. Your money is saving my mother's life. And your willingness to be a surrogate is giving me a chance at something I've wanted for years but couldn't figure out how to achieve." Julian's voice was quiet. "A family. Someone to build a future for. I've been so focused on building my company that I never made time for a personal life. No relationships that lasted. No connections that felt real. And now I'm 42 years old, successful by every measure that matters to the business world, but completely alone." The vulnerability in his admission made Brianna's heart ache. "You don't seem like someone who has trouble connecting with people." "I have trouble trusting people," Julian corrected. "When you have money, you never know if people want you or what you can give them. So I keep everyone at a distance. It's easier. Cleaner." "Is that why you wanted a surrogate instead of, I don't know, finding someone to build a life with naturally?" Julian was quiet for a long moment. "I considered it. But the women in my social circle, they all want something from me. A business connection, a financial security, social status. I wanted a child for the right reasons, not as part of a transactional relationship or a marriage of convenience." "But this is a transactional relationship," Brianna pointed out gently. "It started that way, yes. But these past 2 weeks. Julian trailed off, then shook his head. Sorry, I'm probably saying too much. No, please. What were you going to say? Brianna felt her pulse quicken. Julian met her eyes and something passed between them, a current of understanding. These past 2 weeks, talking with you, getting to know you, it's been the most genuine connection I've had with anyone in years. You don't want anything from me except what we've already agreed upon. You're honest, straightforward. You treat me like a person, not an ATM or a business opportunity. Brianna felt her cheeks warm. I don't know how to treat you any other way. You're just Julian to me. Yes, you're wealthy and successful, but mostly you're the man who's saving my mother's life and showing me unexpected kindness. They finished dinner, the conversation flowing easily to lighter topics. Julian told her about a disastrous business meeting where everything that could go wrong did go wrong. Brianna shared stories about her mother's terrible jokes that still made her laugh. They discovered they both loved old movies, especially classic mysteries. After dinner, Julian suggested they watch a movie in his home theater. Brianna agreed, curious about what a Billionaire's movie room looked like. It turned out to be spectacular. A dozen plush recliners in a room with a screen that took up an entire wall and sound system that made her feel like she was inside the film. But what struck her most was how normal it felt. They chose a mystery from the 1940s, made popcorn in the theater's small kitchen area, and settled into seats next to each other. Halfway through the movie, Brianna glanced over at Julian and caught him smiling at something the detective said on screen. In that moment, with the movie's light flickering across his face, he didn't look like a powerful CEO. He looked like someone who enjoyed simple pleasures, who appreciated a good story, who was maybe just as lonely as she sometimes felt. As if sensing her gaze, Julian turned his head and their eyes met. For a heartbeat, neither of them looked away. Then Brianna quickly turned back to the screen, her heart racing. What was she doing? This was a business arrangement. She shouldn't develop feelings for Julian Hayes. That wasn't part of the plan. That would only complicate everything. But as the movie continued and she found herself hyper-aware of Julian sitting next to her, Brianna had to admit a difficult truth. It might already be too late. The morning of the embryo transfer arrived with a mix of anticipation and nervousness. Brianna woke early, unable to sleep past 6 despite having gone to bed late. Today was the day that would change everything. Dr. Brighton had called the day before to confirm that Brianna's hormone levels were perfect and her uterine lining was ready. The embryos, fertilized 5 days ago in the laboratory, had developed beautifully. Everything was proceeding exactly as planned. Brianna showered and dressed in comfortable clothes as instructed. She was supposed to have a full bladder for the procedure, which would make the ultrasound guidance clearer. She'd been given specific instructions about what to eat and drink. At 8 o'clock, Bernard arrived to drive her to the medical center. To Brianna's surprise, Julian was waiting in the car. I hope you don't mind, he said as she climbed into the back seat beside him. I wanted to be there today. For support if you want it. Brianna felt a rush of warmth. I don't mind at all. Thank you. They rode in comfortable silence for a few minutes. Then Julian reached over and took her hand. The gesture was unexpected but felt natural, comforting. Brianna squeezed his hand gratefully. Nervous? He asked. A little. Mostly excited, I think. Brianna looked out the window at the passing city. After today, if it works, I'll be pregnant. That's such a strange thing to think about. If you need anything during the pregnancy, anything at all, you tell me immediately. Promise me that. Julian's voice was serious. I promise. At the medical center, they were ushered into a private surgical suite. Dr. Brighton was already there, along with Dr. Walsh and 2 nurses Brianna recognized from previous visits. Everyone greeted her warmly, treating her not like a patient but like someone they cared about. Good morning, Brianna. Mr. Hayes. Dr. Brighton smiled at them both. Are we ready to do this? Ready, Brianna confirmed. They had her change into a hospital gown and get comfortable on the examination table. Julian stood nearby, having been given permission to stay in the room during the procedure. His presence was reassuring. Dr. Brighton explained each step as they prepared. We've selected the best quality embryo from the batch. I'm going to place it directly into your uterus using a thin catheter. You'll feel some pressure but no pain. The whole process takes about 5 minutes. 5 minutes to potentially create a life, Brianna murmured. That's incredible. Science is amazing, Dr. Walsh agreed, setting up the ultrasound equipment. The procedure itself was quick and relatively comfortable, just as Dr. Brighton had promised. Brianna watched the ultrasound screen as the tiny catheter delivered the embryo, though she couldn't really distinguish what she was seeing. but she felt the significance of the moment settle over her like a blanket. When it was done, Dr. Brighton smiled. Perfect placement. Now you need to rest here for about 30 minutes, then you can go home. I want you to take it easy for the next few days. No heavy lifting, no strenuous exercise. Just relax and let your body do its work. I'll make sure she rests, Julian said firmly. After Dr. Brighton and the nurses left to give them privacy, Julian pulled a chair close to Brianna's bedside. How do you feel? Strange. Hopeful. Scared. Brianna laughed softly. All of the above? That's understandable. Julian was still holding her hand, and Brianna realized he hadn't let go since they arrived. Thank you for doing this. I know I've said it before, but I want to say it again. Thank you. Thank you for making it possible for me to do it. Brianna met his eyes. And for being here today. You didn't have to come. I wanted to be here. This is an important moment for both of us. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, hands intertwined, both processing what had just happened. Brianna found herself studying Julian's profile. He looked thoughtful, maybe a little emotional, though he was trying to hide it. Julian, can I ask you something? Anything. What kind of father do you want to be? The question had been on her mind for days. I mean, I know you want an heir for your business. But what about beyond that? What kind of parent do you want to be to this child? Julian was quiet for so long that Brianna thought he might not answer. Then he spoke, his voice low and sincere. I want to be present. Involved. My father was a workaholic who missed every important event in my childhood. I barely knew him and he barely knew me. When he died, I realized we'd never had a real conversation about anything that mattered. He looked at Brianna. I don't want that for my child. I want to be there for birthdays and school plays and soccer games. I want to know their dreams and fears. I want to be someone they can trust and rely on. That's beautiful, Brianna whispered, tears pricking her eyes. What about you? Does it bother you that you'll carry this baby but not raise it? Brianna had thought about this a lot over the past few weeks. I think it will be hard. I'm not going to pretend it won't be. But I'm doing this to save my mother's life, and I'd make the same choice 100 times over. Besides. She hesitated, then decided to be honest. I don't think I'll be completely out of this child's life. Will I? Julian's eyes widened slightly. Are you saying you'd want to be involved after the birth? I don't know what I'm saying exactly. We haven't talked about that part. Brianna bit her lip. I assumed I'd hand over the baby and disappear from your life. But these past few weeks, we've become friends. Haven't we? And I guess I hoped that maybe, if you were comfortable with it, I could still know the child somehow. Maybe not as a mother, but as, I don't know, someone who cares. Julian's grip on her hand tightened. Brianna, I would never ask you to disappear from this child's life if you want to be part of it. I've been worried about that actually. Worried that you'd feel forced to step away because of the contract. So we could figure something out? Some kind of arrangement where I could still see them sometimes. We can figure out whatever you want. This doesn't have to be all or nothing. Julian's voice was gentle. We can create our own rules. Relief flooded through Brianna. She hadn't realized how much she'd been worrying about this until the worry was lifted. Thank you. That means a lot to me. After the required 30 minutes, Dr. Brighton came back to check on her and clear her to go home. Remember, bed rest for 48 hours. Then you can resume light activities. We'll do a pregnancy test in 10 days to see if the embryo implanted successfully. Bernard drove them back to the estate, with Julian insisting that Brianna continue resting in the car. When they arrived at the guest house, Julian helped her inside and settled her on the couch with pillows and blankets. I feel silly being treated like I'm fragile, Brianna protested. I feel fine. Doctor's orders, Julian said firmly. You're going to rest. I'll work from here today so I can check on you. You don't have to do that. I know I don't have to. I want to. He pulled out his laptop and settled into an armchair. Now, do you want to watch a movie? Read? Sleep? They ended up watching old movies for most of the afternoon, with Helen bringing lunch and snacks. Julian worked on his laptop during the boring parts, occasionally taking conference calls in the other room. But mostly he just kept Brianna company. It felt domestic, Brianna realized. Comfortable. Like they'd been doing this for years instead of weeks. As the afternoon turned to evening, Julian ordered dinner to be delivered to the guest house so Brianna wouldn't have to walk to the main house. They ate pasta and talked about nothing important, and Brianna felt a contentment she hadn't experienced in years. When Julian finally left around 9 o'clock, he paused at the door. Call me if you need anything tonight. Anything at all. I'll have my phone on. I will. Thank you for staying today. Thank you for letting me. He smiled and Brianna's heart skipped. Get some rest. These next 10 days are going to feel long. After he left, Brianna lay on the couch and placed her hand on her stomach. Somewhere in there, potentially, was the beginning of a life. Julian's baby. A child she would carry for 9 months and then try to figure out how to love from whatever distance they decided was appropriate. But more than that, somewhere in the past few weeks, something else had begun growing. Something between her and Julian that had nothing to do with their business arrangement and everything to do with genuine connection. Brianna closed her eyes and tried not to think about how complicated that was going to make everything. 10 days felt like an eternity. Brianna followed Dr. Brighton's instructions carefully, resting for the first 48 hours and then gradually returning to light activities. She attended her online classes, visited her mother at the hospital, and tried not to obsess over every small change in her body. Her mother was doing remarkably well. The experimental treatment was working better than anyone had dared hope. Diane had more energy, her appetite was returning, and the latest scans showed significant tumor shrinkage. Every visit was a reminder of why Brianna was doing this. Julian continued to have dinner with her most evenings, either at the main house or increasingly at the guest house. They developed a comfortable routine. He'd arrive around 7, often bringing work with him, and they'd talk while Helen prepared dinner. Sometimes they'd watch movies afterward. Sometimes they'd just talk late into the night. Brianna found herself looking forward to these evenings more than she should. She'd catch herself checking the time, getting nervous before he arrived, feeling disappointed on the rare nights when he had late meetings and couldn't make it. She was developing feelings for him. Real feelings. And she knew it was a terrible idea. On the 10th day, Brianna woke with butterflies in her stomach. Today was pregnancy test day. Dr. Brighton was coming at 9 o'clock to draw blood, and they'd have results by early afternoon. Brianna tried to focus on her classwork, but it was impossible. She paced the guest house, second-guessing every decision. What if the embryo hadn't implanted? What if they had to try again? What if it didn't work at all? At 9 sharp, Dr. Brighton arrived with her medical bag and warm smile. Good morning, Brianna. Big day. I'm so nervous, Brianna admitted. That's completely natural. But remember, if it didn't work this time, we have other embryos. The odds of pregnancy are higher than you might think, especially given how healthy you are. The blood draw was quick. Dr. Brighton promised to call as soon as the lab results came in and reminded Brianna to try to stay relaxed. After she left, Brianna called her mother. Diane was having a good day, excited about the possibility of becoming a grandmother, even in these unusual circumstances. However this works out, baby, I'm proud of you, Diane said. You're giving someone a beautiful gift. Thanks, Mama. And this Julian, you talk about him a lot. He sounds like a good man. Brianna hesitated. He is. He's been really kind through all of this. Just kind? Diane's voice held a knowing tone. Because you sound like there might be more than kindness involved. Mama, it's complicated. Love usually is, baby. I didn't say anything about love, Brianna protested even as her heart raced. You didn't have to. I'm your mother. I can hear it in your voice when you talk about him. Diane was quiet for a moment. Just be careful with your heart, Brianna. Rich men live in different worlds than we do. After the call ended, Brianna tried to process her mother's words. Was it that obvious? Could everyone tell that she was falling for Julian Hayes? Around noon there was a knock on the door. Brianna opened it to find Julian standing there, looking unusually uncertain. I couldn't concentrate on work, he admitted. Can I wait here with you? For the results. Of course. Brianna stepped aside to let him in. I'm glad you're here actually. I'm going crazy waiting alone. They sat on the couch, both too nervous to do much except make small talk. Julian told her about a funny moment in a meeting. Brianna shared something her mother had said. But underneath it all was the tension of waiting. At 2 o'clock, Brianna's phone rang. Dr. Brighton's name appeared on the screen. Brianna's hand shook as she answered. Hello. Brianna, it's Dr. Brighton. I have your results. The doctor paused and Brianna's heart nearly stopped. Then, congratulations. You're pregnant. The words didn't register at first. Then they hit her like a wave. I'm pregnant? It worked? Really? Really? Your HCG levels are excellent. The embryo implanted successfully. You're going to have a baby. Brianna felt tears streaming down her face. Thank you. Thank you so much. After the call ended, she turned to Julian, who was watching her with intense focus. I'm pregnant. It worked. For a moment, Julian just stared at her. Then, to her surprise, his eyes filled with tears. He stood and pulled her into a hug, holding her close. "Thank you," he whispered against her hair. "Thank you, Brianna. You've given me more than I can ever repay." They stood there, holding each other, both overwhelmed by the magnitude of what was happening. When they finally pulled apart, they were both crying and laughing at the same time. "I can't believe it actually worked on the first try," Brianna said, wiping her eyes. "You're incredible. Do you know that?" Julian's hands were still on her shoulders, his blue eyes intense. "You're actually going to have my baby." The words hung in the air between them, charged with meaning. Brianna felt her breath catch. They were standing so close, Julian's hands warm on her shoulders, his eyes locked on hers. "Julian," she whispered, not sure what she was asking for. "You seem to understand anyway." Slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted, he leaned down. His lips touched hers softly, tentatively, a question more than a statement. Brianna answered by kissing him back. It was gentle and sweet, full of the emotions they'd both been trying to ignore. When they finally pulled apart, they were both breathing hard. "I probably shouldn't have done that," Julian said, though he didn't sound sorry. "I'm glad you did," Brianna admitted. "I've wanted you to." Julian cupped her face in his hands. "Brianna, I need to be honest with you. What I'm feeling, it's more than gratitude. More than friendship. Somewhere in these past few weeks, I've fallen for you. And I don't know what to do about that." Brianna's heart soared even as her mind screamed warnings. "I've fallen for you too. But Julian, I don't know if this is a good idea. Everything is so complicated already." "I know. The surrogacy arrangement, the difference in our circumstances, the fact that you're now pregnant with my baby." Julian didn't let go of her. "But I also know that what I feel for you is real. More real than anything I've felt in years." "What do we do?" Brianna asked. "I don't know. But I don't want to pretend these feelings don't exist." His thumb traced her cheek. "Do you?" "No," Brianna admitted. "I don't want to pretend either. Then we figure it out together. One day at a time." Julian leaned his forehead against hers. "If you're willing to try." Brianna knew it was risky. Knew that mixing emotions with their business arrangement could lead to heartbreak. But as she stood there with Julian, pregnant with his baby and falling deeper for him every day, she couldn't bring herself to walk away. "I'm willing to try," she said. "Whatever this is, whatever it becomes, I want to see where it goes." Julian kissed her again, deeper this time, and Brianna let herself fall into the moment. They'd figure out the complications later. For now, she just wanted to feel this joy, this connection, this hope that maybe, somehow, everything would work out. The weeks following the positive pregnancy test were a mixture of medical appointments, morning sickness, and deepening emotional connection with Julian. Brianna found herself navigating a new reality where everything seemed to be changing at once. Her mother continued to improve dramatically. Dr. Chen was calling it a remarkable response to treatment, and the latest scans showed the tumors shrinking faster than expected. Diane had even been able to leave the hospital for outpatient treatment, moving into a comfortable recovery apartment that Julian had arranged near the medical center. But the biggest change was in Brianna's relationship with Julian. After their first kiss, they'd talked for hours about what it meant, where they could go from here. They'd agreed to take things slowly, to see where their feelings led them naturally, without pressure or expectations. In practice, that meant Julian was around even more than before. He'd started working from the guest house several days a week, sitting at the dining table with his laptop while Brianna attended her online classes or rested on the couch. It was domestic and comfortable, and sometimes Brianna would look up from her textbook to find him watching her with a soft expression that made her heart melt. One morning, about 6 weeks into the pregnancy, Brianna woke up to terrible nausea. She barely made it to the bathroom before getting sick, and the sound must have carried because within minutes, Julian was knocking on the guest house door. "Brianna? Are you okay?" His voice was worried. She managed to rinse her mouth and stumble to the door. "Morning sickness. Dr. Brighton said it might start around now." Julian took one look at her pale face and immediately went into caretaker mode. He helped her back to the couch, brought her crackers and ginger tea, and sat with her until the nausea passed. "You don't have to stay," Brianna protested weakly. "I know you have meetings. They can wait. You're more important." Julian held her hand, his thumb tracing circles on her skin. "Besides, this is my fault. I'm the reason you're pregnant and feeling sick. It's not your fault. I agreed to this, remember? Still, I feel responsible." He brushed her hair back from her forehead. "How can I help?" Over the following weeks, as the morning sickness became a regular occurrence, Julian proved to be surprisingly attentive. He learned what foods Brianna could keep down, always made sure she had crackers by her bedside, and stayed with her during the worst episodes. But their relationship wasn't all about pregnancy symptoms. They also found joy in simple moments. Julian taught Brianna about his business, explaining how commercial real estate worked, letting her read contracts and ask questions. He valued her opinions, even sought them out, and Brianna found herself becoming genuinely interested in his work. In return, Brianna introduced Julian to parts of life he'd been too busy to notice. They went for walks in the nearby park, not caring that they might be seen together. She taught him how to cook simple meals, laughing when he burned the pasta and celebrating when he successfully made scrambled eggs. They visited art galleries and bookstores, places Julian admitted he hadn't gone to for pleasure in years. One evening, about 2 months into the pregnancy, they were sitting on the guest house porch watching the sunset. Brianna's hand rested on her stomach, which was just starting to show a small bump. "I can't believe there's a baby in there," she said softly. "A tiny human we made." "Technically the lab made," Julian pointed out with a smile. "You know what I mean." Brianna looked at him. "Do you think about it? What the baby will be like?" "Constantly." Julian's voice was warm. "I hope he or she has your kindness and your strength. Your ability to see the good in people. And I hope they have your intelligence and determination. Your ability to turn dreams into reality." Julian reached over and took her hand. "Can I tell you something?" "Always." "When I first decided to have a child through surrogacy, I thought of it purely as a means to an end. An heir for my company, someone to leave my legacy to. It was practical, businesslike." He paused. "But now, knowing you're carrying this baby, getting to know you, falling for you, it's completely different. I don't just want an heir anymore. I want a family. A real one." Brianna's throat tightened with emotion. "Julian, I'm not asking you for anything," he said quickly. "I just wanted you to know that my perspective has changed." "You've changed it." "You've changed mine too," Brianna admitted. "I thought I was just doing this to save my mother. And yes, that was the main reason. But now I'm also doing it because I believe in you. I believe you'll be an amazing father. And I want to be part of that, however it looks." They kissed as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. When they pulled apart, Julian rested his hand gently on Brianna's stomach. "Hello in there," he said softly. "This is your dad. I can't wait to meet you." Brianna felt tears spring to her eyes. The tenderness in his voice, the gentle way he touched her stomach, the obvious love already forming for a child he'd never met, it all overwhelmed her. "You're going to be such a good father," she whispered. "I'm going to try. And with you helping me, I think I might actually succeed." The next day, Julian surprised Brianna with an invitation to his office. "I want you to see where I work. Meet some of my team. If that's okay with you?" Brianna agreed, curious and a little nervous. She wore one of the nice dresses Julian had bought her, a maroon one that accommodated her growing belly, and let Bernard drive them into the city. Julian's office building was impressive, all glass and steel rising into the sky. Inside, people greeted him with respect, and he introduced Brianna simply as, "My friend Brianna," without explaining their arrangement. She appreciated that. His office on the top floor was spacious but surprisingly personal. There were photographs on the walls, books on shelves, a guitar in the corner similar to the one at his house. "You play guitar?" Brianna asked, surprised. "I used to. Haven't had time in years." Julian looked at the instrument fondly. "My mother taught me. She died when I was 15. I'm sorry. That must have been hard." "It was. And it's part of why I buried myself in work. It was easier than dealing with the loss." He touched the guitar strings lightly. "Maybe I should start playing again. Could play for the baby." "I'd like that. And I think the baby would too." Throughout the day, Brianna watched Julian in his element. He was confident and decisive in meetings, fair but firm with his team, innovative in his problem-solving. But she also noticed how he made time to ask employees about their lives, remembered personal details, created a work environment that felt collaborative rather than hierarchical. "You're a good boss," she told him during lunch in his office. "I try to treat people the way I'd want to be treated." Seems basic, but apparently it's not that common in business. He smiled at her. "What do you think? Could you see yourself in this world someday? Running your own company?" "Maybe. It's less intimidating now that I understand it better." Brianna took a bite of her sandwich. "You've taught me a lot these past few months. You've taught me more. You've shown me there's more to life than quarterly earnings and acquisition deals." Julian reached across the table to take her hand. You've reminded me how to be human. That evening back at the estate they had dinner on the main house terrace. The weather was perfect, warm but not hot, with a gentle breeze carrying the scent of flowers from the garden. I've been thinking, Julian said as they finished dessert, about what happens after the baby is born. About our arrangement. Brianna's heart skipped. Okay. The contract says you'll relinquish parental rights and step back from the baby's life. But we've also talked about you staying involved somehow. He looked at her seriously. What do you want, Brianna? Really? Brianna had been thinking about this constantly, especially as her feelings for Julian deepened. Honestly? I don't know anymore. When I started this, I thought I could carry the baby, hand them over, and move on with my life. But now... She placed her hand on her stomach. Now I can feel little movements sometimes. Flutters. And I'm attached in a way I didn't expect. What if you didn't have to step back? Julian asked quietly. What if we could build something together? The three of us. What are you saying? I'm saying that I'm falling in love with you, Brianna. Not just grateful to you, not just attracted to you, but actually in love with you. Julian's eyes were intense. And I think you might feel the same way. And if we both feel that way, why are we pretending this is just a business arrangement? Brianna's eyes filled with tears. I am in love with you. But Julian, we come from such different worlds. After the baby is born, when the pregnancy glow fades and reality sets in, what if you realize you made a mistake? What if you realize I don't fit into your life? What if you're exactly what's been missing from my life? Julian stood and knelt beside her chair, taking both her hands. I'm not promising it will be easy. We'll have challenges to figure out. But I want to try. I want to build a life with you, raise this baby together, be a real family. Will you consider it? Brianna looked at him, this man who'd started as a stranger and became someone she couldn't imagine living without. She thought about the past few months, the kindness he'd shown, the connection they'd built, the love that had grown between them. Yes, she whispered. I'll consider it. I'll more than consider it. I want it too. Julian pulled her gently from her chair and into his arms, kissing her deeply. When they pulled apart, they were both crying and smiling. We're really going to do this? Brianna asked. Try to make a real relationship work? We're going to do more than try. We're going to succeed. Julian's confidence was infectious. Because what we have is too good to let slip away. As they stood on the terrace, wrapped in each other's arms with the baby growing between them, Brianna felt something she'd thought lost forever. True hope for the future. 3 months into the pregnancy, Brianna's belly had grown noticeably round. She wore bright, flowing dresses that Julian kept buying for her, each one making her feel beautiful despite her changing body. The morning sickness had finally subsided, replaced by an energy and glow that everyone commented on. Her mother, now in remission and living in her recovery apartment, visited the estate frequently. Diane and Julian had formed an easy friendship, bonding over their shared love for Brianna and excitement about the baby. Watching them laugh together over dinner, Brianna felt her heart might burst from happiness. But despite everything good in her life, Brianna carried a weight of uncertainty. She and Julian had acknowledged their feelings for each other, but they hadn't really discussed what that meant practically. They were in a kind of limbo, more than friends, definitely romantic, but not quite defining their relationship beyond seeing where it goes. One Saturday afternoon, Julian suggested they go into the city for lunch, somewhere public. I want to take you on a proper date, he explained. Not dinner at my house or watching movies. A real date where I show you off to the world. Brianna wore a flowing blue dress that complemented her skin tone and showed off her baby bump proudly. Julian looked handsome in casual slacks and a green button-down shirt. They made a striking couple, and Brianna noticed people glancing their way as Bernard drove them to an upscale restaurant downtown. Lunch was perfect. They sat at a quiet corner table, talking and laughing easily. Julian held her hand across the table, not caring who saw. He asked about her classes, which she was excelling in. She asked about his latest property development project. But as they finished dessert, Julian grew serious. Brianna, there's something I need to talk to you about. Something important. Her heart skipped. Okay. What is it? I've been thinking a lot about us. About this baby. About what happens after you give birth. Julian didn't let go of her hand. The contract we signed, it doesn't reflect what I want anymore. It doesn't reflect what we've become to each other. I know. I've been thinking about that too, Brianna admitted. I want to be clear about something. When I first hired you as a surrogate, I thought of you as a solution to a problem. But you're not that. You're not just the woman carrying my baby. You're the woman I'm in love with. Julian's eyes were intense. I love you, Brianna. Not just because you're pregnant with my child. I love you for who you are. Your kindness, your strength, your honesty, your humor. I love everything about you. Tears spilled down Brianna's cheeks. I love you too. So much it scares me sometimes. Then let's stop being scared. Let's stop tiptoeing around this and commit to building something real. Julian squeezed her hand. Move into the main house with me. Not as my surrogate or my employee or whatever strange arrangement this started as. Move in with me as my partner. Let's raise this baby together as a real family. Brianna's heart soared even as doubts crept in. Julian, are you sure? Really sure? What about the differences in our backgrounds? What about your business reputation? What about none of that matters compared to how I feel about you? Julian interrupted gently. Brianna, I've spent years building wealth and success, but I've been miserable and alone. These past few months with you have been the happiest of my adult life. I don't want to go back to who I was before you. I don't want that either, Brianna whispered. But I'm scared. What if people judge us? What if they think I trapped you or took advantage of our arrangement? Let them think what they want. I know the truth and you know the truth. That's all that matters. Julian's voice was firm. Besides, I'm the one who started falling for you. I'm the one who couldn't keep things purely professional. If anyone was trapped, it was you, falling for the man whose baby you were carrying. Brianna laughed through her tears. I fell pretty willingly. So what do you say? Will you move into the main house? Will you let me take care of you and love you the way I want to? Before Brianna could answer, her phone rang. She glanced at the screen and saw it was the hospital. A cold fear gripped her heart. I need to take this. It might be about my mother. Of course. Brianna answered with shaking hands. Hello. Miss Mitchell, this is Dr. Chin. I'm calling about your mother. She came in for her routine checkup today, and we've noticed some concerning developments. Brianna's world tilted. What kind of developments? Some of her blood markers have elevated unexpectedly. We're running more tests, but I wanted you to know so you could come in. She's asking for you. I'll be right there. Brianna hung up and looked at Julian, unable to hide her panic. It's my mother. There's something wrong. Let's go. Julian immediately signaled for the check. Within 5 minutes, they were in the car with Bernard driving quickly but safely toward St. Catherine's Medical Center. Brianna's mind raced with worst-case scenarios. The cancer was back. The treatment had stopped working. She was losing her mother after believing she was saved. All the joy of moments ago evaporated, replaced by crushing fear. Julian held her hand the entire drive, offering silent support. When they arrived at the hospital, he stayed right beside her as they rushed to Dr. Chen's office. Diane was already there, looking smaller and more fragile than she had in weeks. Brianna rushed to hug her mother. I'm okay, baby, Diane said, though her voice was shaky. Just scared. Dr. Chen cleared his throat. Thank you for coming so quickly. I want to assure you both that this may be nothing serious, but I believe in being cautious. Mrs. Mitchell's cancer markers have increased slightly. It's not necessarily a recurrence, but we need to run additional scans to be sure. When? Brianna asked. I've already scheduled them for this afternoon. We should have results by tomorrow morning. The next several hours were a blur of waiting and worrying. Julian stayed with Brianna and Diane the entire time, never once suggesting he had other places to be or more important things to do. He brought them coffee, made sure they ate, and provided a steady, calming presence. When the scans were finally done, Dr. Chin told them to go home and try to rest. He'd call with results first thing in the morning. That night, Brianna couldn't sleep. She lay in the bed in the guest house, staring at the ceiling, terrified of losing her mother just when she'd thought everything was going to be okay. Around midnight, there was a soft knock on her door. It's me, Julian's voice called. Can I come in? Yes. He came in wearing pajama pants and a t-shirt, looking uncertain. I couldn't sleep, knowing you were over here worrying alone. Can I stay with you? Just to hold you? Brianna nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. Julian climbed into bed beside her and pulled her into his arms, her head resting on his chest. She's going to be okay, he said softly. I believe that. What if she's not? What if the cancer is back? I can't lose her, Julian. Not now. Not after everything. You're not going to lose her. And even if the news isn't perfect tomorrow, we'll fight it together. You, me, your mother, Dr. Chin. All of us together. Brianna cried into his chest while he held her, stroking her hair and whispering reassurances. Eventually, exhaustion took over and she fell asleep in his arms. She woke to sunlight streaming through the windows and the sound of her phone ringing. Dr. Chen's name on the screen. Her heart pounded as she answered. Hello. Miss Mitchell, it's Dr. Chen. I have good news. The scans are clear. Your mother's cancer hasn't returned. Relief crashed over Brianna so hard she couldn't breathe for a moment. Are you sure? Completely sure. The elevated markers appear to be a temporary fluctuation, possibly related to a minor infection we found and are now treating with antibiotics. Her cancer is still in remission. After the call ended, Brianna turned to Julian, who was sitting up in bed watching her with anxious eyes. She's okay. The cancer isn't back. It's just an infection. Julian pulled her into a fierce hug. Thank God. Thank God. They held each other for a long moment, both overwhelmed with relief. When they pulled apart, Brianna looked into Julian's eyes and saw everything she needed to know. Yes, she said. Yes to what? Yes, I'll move into the main house. Yes, I'll be your partner. Yes to building a life together, raising this baby together, being a real family. Brianna placed her hand on her stomach. After last night, after you stayed with me, after you showed me that you're not just saying these things but living them, I know I want this. I want us. Julian's face broke into the biggest smile she'd ever seen from him. He kissed her deeply, one hand on her cheek, the other gentle on her belly. You've made me the happiest man alive, he said. I'm going to spend every day proving that you made the right choice. I know I have, Brianna replied. Because love should always lead. And this love, what we have, it's going to lead us somewhere beautiful. Moving into the main house felt like stepping into a dream. Julian had insisted on giving Brianna the entire west wing as her private space, with a bedroom suite, sitting room, and a nursery that overlooked the gardens. He'd hired an interior designer to work with Brianna on decorating, making sure every choice was hers. This is our home now, Julian told her as they stood in what would be the baby's nursery, still empty but full of potential. I want you to feel comfortable here, like you belong. I'm starting to, Brianna admitted, looking around at the space that would soon hold their child. It's just a lot to adjust to. But adjust she did. Over the following weeks, as her pregnancy progressed into the 4th and 5th months, Brianna settled into life at the main house. She finished her online semester with excellent grades, impressing Julian and herself with how much she'd learned. Her mother continued to thrive in remission, visiting often and helping Brianna shop for baby items. Yet despite all the good, Brianna found herself plagued by doubts late at night. Would she be a good mother? Would Julian's feelings last after the baby was born and life became less romantic and more routine? Would people in Julian's social circle accept her, or would she always be the outsider who started as a paid surrogate? One evening, about 5 months into the pregnancy, Julian's business partner invited them to a formal charity gala. It would be their first public appearance together as a couple. You don't have to go if you're not comfortable, Julian assured her. I can make an excuse. But Brianna refused to hide. No, I want to go. I want to be by your side. She bought a stunning formal dress in emerald green that accommodated her growing belly and made her feel regal. Julian wore a classic black tuxedo, looking devastatingly handsome. When they arrived at the gala together, heads turned. Brianna could feel people staring, whispering. She held her head high, her hand tucked into Julian's arm, and tried to ignore the obvious curiosity. Julian Hayes, good to see you. A tall man in his 60s approached, his eyes immediately going to Brianna's belly. And who is this lovely young woman? This is Brianna Mitchell, my partner, Julian said firmly. Brianna, this is Frank Morrison, one of my oldest business associates. Frank's eyebrows rose, but he recovered quickly. Pleasure to meet you, Miss Mitchell. Julian, I didn't know you were seeing anyone. It's a recent development, but a wonderful one. Julian's hand tightened on Brianna's. We're expecting a baby in a few months. Congratulations to you both. Frank's tone was polite, but Brianna could see the questions in his eyes. How did you meet? How long have you been together? Is this a business arrangement? Throughout the evening, similar encounters happened again and again. People were polite to Brianna's face, but she could feel their judgment, their curiosity, their surprise that someone like Julian Hayes was with someone like her. A younger African-American woman from a completely different background, pregnant with his child only months after they'd met. By the time dinner was served, Brianna felt exhausted from smiling and deflecting subtle questions. She excused herself to the restroom, needing a moment alone. In the elegant bathroom, she leaned against the sink and took deep breaths. She could do this. She was strong. Julian loved her. That was all that mattered. But then two women walked in, not noticing Brianna in the far stall. They were older, wealthy-looking, and their voices carried clearly. "Did you see Julian Hayes with that girl?" one said. "She's so young. And pregnant. How long have they even known each other?" "I heard she was his surrogate," the other woman replied. "Apparently he hired her to carry his baby and then got involved with her. It's all very unusual. Unusual is one word for it. I'd say opportunistic on her part. She saw a chance to trap a billionaire and took it. Well, it certainly worked. I give it a year before he realizes his mistake. Pregnancy makes everything seem romantic. Wait until the reality of a crying baby and a young woman who probably just wants his money sets in." They left, their laughter echoing off the marble walls. Brianna stayed in the stall, tears streaming silently down her face. Was that what everyone thought? That she trapped Julian? That she was with him for his money? When she finally composed herself enough to return to the ballroom, Julian took one look at her face and frowned. "What happened?" "Nothing, I'm just tired. Can we leave?" "Of course." Julian didn't question further, but his jaw was tight as he made their excuses and led her to the car. In the back seat, Brianna finally broke down. She told Julian what she'd overheard, the words pouring out between sobs. Julian's face hardened with anger. "Those women don't know anything about us. About what we have. But what if they're right? What if people always think that about me? That I'm just some opportunist who trapped you?" Brianna wiped her eyes. "Maybe this was a mistake. Maybe we're from two different worlds." "Brianna, look at me." Julian took her face in his hands. "I don't care what those women or anyone else thinks. I know the truth. You didn't trap me. You gave me more than I ever hoped for. Love, companionship, a family. Those things are priceless, and you offered them freely without asking for anything beyond our original agreement. But. No buts. I know your heart. I know your character. If anything, I'm the opportunist here. You came into my life to help me have a child, and I fell so hard for you that I couldn't let you go." He smiled through his own tears. "You're the best thing that's ever happened to me, and I'll fight anyone who suggests otherwise." Brianna leaned into his touch. "I just don't want to be an embarrassment to you. You could never be that. You're brilliant, kind, strong, beautiful. I'm proud to have you by my side." Julian kissed her forehead. "And you know what? We're going to prove all those doubters wrong. We're going to build an incredible life together and raise our child with so much love that no one will be able to question what we have." Over the following weeks, Julian made good on his promise. He introduced Brianna to his business colleagues properly, hosting dinners where he made sure everyone understood that Brianna was his partner, not some temporary situation. He involved her in his business decisions, seeking her opinion and valuing her input. He took her to visit his grandmother, a formidable woman who'd built her own business empire years ago. The grandmother, Elizabeth Hayes, lived in a mansion across town. She was in her 80s, sharp as a tack, with steel-gray hair and blue eyes like Julian's. Brianna was terrified to meet her. "Grandmother can be intimidating," Julian warned as they drove to her house. "But she values authenticity above all else. Just be yourself." Elizabeth greeted them at the door herself, waving away the butler. She looked Brianna up and down with an assessing gaze that made Brianna want to squirm. "So you're the woman who's captured my grandson's heart," Elizabeth said bluntly. "And carrying his child. Quite a story." "Yes, ma'am." Brianna held out her hand. "It's an honor to meet you." Elizabeth shook her hand with a surprisingly firm grip. Come in, come in. Let's have tea and you can tell me all about yourself. And I mean really tell me. Not the sanitized version." Over tea in Elizabeth's sun-filled conservatory, Brianna found herself opening up in ways she hadn't expected. Something about Elizabeth's direct manner made her feel like honesty was the only option. She told her about growing up with a single mother, about sacrificing her education to care for her mother, about the desperation that led her to become a surrogate. "And then I fell in love with your grandson," Brianna finished. "Which wasn't part of the plan at all." Elizabeth was quiet for a long moment, studying Brianna's face. Then she smiled, the expression transforming her severe features. "You'll do nicely." "I will. My grandson needs someone real in his life. Someone who knows hardship and survived it with grace. Someone who values relationships over revenue." Elizabeth reached over and patted Brianna's hand. "You'll keep him grounded. And that baby will have a mother who knows how to teach them about real strength, the kind that comes from character, not bank accounts." Brianna felt tears prick her eyes. "Thank you. That means more than you know." "Julian," Elizabeth turned to her grandson, "you've chosen well. Don't mess this up. I won't, grandmother. I promise. As they drove home, Brianna felt lighter than she had in weeks. Your grandmother is amazing. She likes you. I could tell. Julian squeezed her hand. See? You fit into my life perfectly. Because my life isn't about galas and business associates. It's about the people who matter. And you matter most of all. That night, as they lay in bed together, Brianna's hand on her growing belly and Julian's hand covering hers, she finally let go of her doubts. Yes, they came from different worlds. Yes, their relationship had an unconventional beginning. But what they built was real and strong and worth fighting for. I love you, she told Julian. And I'm done questioning whether I deserve this. You deserve everything good in life, Julian replied. And I'm going to spend the rest of my life proving that to you. The last trimester of pregnancy passed in a blur of preparation and anticipation. Brianna's belly grew large and round, and the baby became increasingly active. Julian would spend hours with his hand on her stomach, feeling the kicks and rolls, talking to their child in a soft voice that never failed to make Brianna's heart melt. They decided not to find out the baby's gender, wanting it to be a surprise. Instead, they decorated the nursery in soft yellows and greens, creating a peaceful space filled with books, toys, and all the love two expectant parents could pour into a room. Diane was a constant presence, her health continuing to hold strong. She'd bonded with Julian's grandmother Elizabeth, and the two older women would spend hours talking while Brianna and Julian worked on baby preparations. It was the family Brianna had always dreamed of, expanded and loving. Brianna's online courses had gone so well that she'd been offered a junior position at one of Julian's partner companies after the baby was born. She could work from home, set her own hours, and start building her career. Julian had insisted she didn't need to work at all, but Brianna wanted her own accomplishments, her own identity beyond being Julian Hayes' partner. I'm proud of you, Julian told her when she told him about the job offer. You've worked so hard for this. I learned from the best, Brianna replied, kissing him. You showed me that it's never too late to pursue your dreams. At 38 weeks pregnant, Brianna woke up in the middle of the night to a sharp pain in her abdomen. She lay there for a moment, wondering if it was just the baby moving. Then another pain came, stronger this time, and she knew. Julian, she whispered, shaking his shoulder. Julian, wake up. I think it's time. He was instantly alert, sitting up and turning on the bedside lamp. Are you sure? Are you in labor? Another contraction hit, answering his question. Yes. Definitely yes. What followed was controlled chaos. Julian helped Brianna dress while calling Dr. Brighton. Bernard appeared in record time with the car. Diane, who'd been staying in a guest room for the past week in case this happened, came rushing in wearing her robe. My baby's having a baby, she said, tears in her eyes. I can't believe this day is finally here. At the hospital, they were immediately taken to a private birthing suite. Dr. Brighton was already there, calm and reassuring. You're doing great, Brianna. Everything looks perfect. Labor was hard, harder than Brianna had imagined despite all the preparation and classes. Julian stayed by her side the entire time, holding her hand, wiping her forehead, whispering encouragement. You're the strongest person I know, he told her during a particularly difficult contraction. You can do this. I can't, Brianna gasped. It hurts too much. Yes, you can. You're almost there. Just a little longer and we'll meet our baby. 14 hours after that first contraction, with Julian holding her hand and Dr. Brighton coaching her through each push, Brianna heard the most beautiful sound in the world. A baby's cry. It's a boy, Dr. Brighton announced, her voice filled with joy. A healthy, beautiful baby boy. They placed the baby on Brianna's chest, and she looked down at the tiny, perfect human she'd carried for 9 months. He had a head full of dark hair, blue eyes that might change color, and the most adorable button nose. He was crying lustily, his little fists waving in the air. Hi, baby, Brianna whispered, tears streaming down her face. We've been waiting for you. Julian was crying too, his hand gently touching the baby's head. He's perfect. Absolutely perfect. What are you going to name him? Dr. Brighton asked as she worked. Julian looked at Brianna. They discussed names but never settled on one, waiting to meet the baby first. What do you think? Brianna studied the baby's face. Daniel. It means, God is my judge. After everything we've been through, all the judgment from others, I want him to know that only goodness and love matter. Daniel Hayes. Daniel, Julian repeated, his voice full of wonder. Daniel Julian Hayes. It's perfect. After the medical team finished their checks and cleaned them all up, they were moved to a recovery suite. Diane was allowed in and she broke down crying when she held her grandson for the first time. "He's beautiful, baby. Just beautiful." Diane looked at Brianna with shining eyes. "I'm so proud of you. And so grateful I'm here to see this." "Me too, Mama. Me too." Over the next 2 days, while Brianna recovered in the hospital, Julian barely left her side. He changed diapers, learned to swaddle, held Daniel for hours while Brianna slept. Watching him with their son, Brianna fell even more deeply in love with him. On the morning they were scheduled to go home, Julian seemed nervous. He kept fidgeting, checking his phone, looking at the door. "Is everything okay?" Brianna asked as she nursed Daniel. "Yes. Actually, there's something I want to do before we leave the hospital." Julian took a deep breath. "Something I should have done weeks ago." He got down on one knee beside her hospital bed and Brianna's breath caught. "Brianna Mitchell, you came into my life when I needed hope, and you gave me more than I ever imagined. You gave me love, partnership, and now this beautiful son. You've shown me what it means to be truly happy, to be part of a real family." Julian pulled out a small velvet box. "I know we started this journey in an unconventional way, but I want to continue it in the most traditional way possible. Will you marry me?" He opened the box to reveal a stunning ring. The center stone was a brilliant diamond, but it was surrounded by smaller green stones that matched the dress she'd worn the day they met. "Emeralds," Julian explained. "To match your eyes when the light hits them. And to remind us both of where we came from and how far we've come." Brianna was crying so hard she could barely speak. "Yes. Yes, of course I'll marry you." Julian slipped the ring on her finger, then carefully leaned over Daniel to kiss her. "You've made me the happiest man alive. Again. When do you want to get married?" Brianna asked, admiring the ring. "As soon as you're ready. Tomorrow, next month, next year. Whenever you want." "Soon?" Brianna decided. "I don't want to wait. I want to make this official, make us official." They settled on a wedding date 6 weeks after Daniel's birth, giving Brianna time to recover and adjust to motherhood. It would be a small ceremony at the estate, just family and close friends. Those 6 weeks were a whirlwind of sleepless nights, feeding schedules, and the overwhelming love that came with being new parents. Daniel was a good baby, sleeping in reasonable stretches and responding to their voices with coos and gurgles that melted their hearts. Julian proved to be an attentive, involved father. He insisted on splitting nighttime duties, taking Daniel so Brianna could sleep. He attended every pediatrician appointment, asked a million questions, and read every parenting book he could find. "You're amazing with him," Brianna told him one night as she watched Julian rock Daniel to sleep, singing softly. "I'm just doing what feels right." Julian looked down at his son with such love that Brianna had to wipe tears from her eyes. "Being a father is the best thing I've ever done." The wedding day arrived bright and clear. They'd set up chairs in the garden, decorated with flowers and ribbons. Brianna wore a flowing white dress that made her feel like a princess, with her hair styled in natural curls and minimal makeup that highlighted her natural beauty. Daniel, at 6 weeks old, wore a tiny tuxedo that made everyone cry with how adorable he looked. Julian stood at the altar wearing a navy suit, his eyes locked on Brianna as she walked toward him. Her mother, healthy and radiant, walked beside her, both of them crying happy tears. The ceremony was officiated by a judge who was a friend of Elizabeth Hayes. It was simple and heartfelt, focused on love and commitment rather than religious tradition. "Julian, do you take Brianna to be your wife, to love and cherish in sickness and health, for as long as you both shall live?" "I do. With all my heart, I do." "Brianna, do you take Julian to be your husband, to love and cherish in sickness and health, for as long as you both shall live?" "I do. Forever and always, I do." They exchanged rings, simple bands that complemented Brianna's engagement ring. Then Julian took her face in his hands and kissed her as the small gathering applauded. "I present to you Mr. and Mrs. Hayes," the judge announced. The reception was held on the terrace, with Helen having prepared an incredible feast. Daniel slept in his grandmother Diane's arms while Brianna and Julian had their first dance as husband and wife. "Can you believe we're here?" Brianna asked as Julian spun her gently. "A year ago I was desperate and alone. Now I'm married to the love of my life with a beautiful baby." "A year ago I was rich but empty," Julian replied. "Now I'm truly wealthy in all the ways that matter." Elizabeth Hayes stood to give a toast, her voice strong despite her age. "I've watched Julian build an empire, but today I watched him build a family. And that's the greater achievement. Brianna, you've brought light into my grandson's life. You've shown him that the best things in life can't be bought, only earned through love and commitment. Welcome to the family, dear girl." You belong here. Diane also stood, tears streaming down her face. Brianna, my baby, you've always been the strongest person I know. You sacrificed so much to save my life, but in doing so, you found your own life, your own love. Julian, thank you for seeing what I've always seen in my daughter. That she's extraordinary. Take care of her, love her, and know that you've gained not just a wife but a sister in me. As the sun set over the estate, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange, Brianna held Daniel while Julian wrapped his arms around them both. Their family complete and perfect. I love you, Julian whispered into her hair. I love you too. Both of you. Brianna looked down at Daniel, who'd woken up and was staring at them with wide blue eyes. We did it, little one. We found our happy ending. But it wasn't an ending at all, Brianna realized. It was a beginning. The beginning of a lifetime of love, laughter, challenges overcome together, and a family built on the foundation of kindness, hope, and the belief that love should always lead. 6 months later, Brianna sat in her home office, working on a business proposal while Daniel played in his playpen nearby. She'd taken the job she'd been offered and was excelling at it, even considering starting her own consulting business eventually. Julian came in from his own office, looking tired but happy. How's my brilliant wife? Busy. How's my brilliant husband? Also busy. But never too busy for this. He leaned down to kiss her, then picked up Daniel, who squealed with delight. And definitely never too busy for this guy. Brianna's phone buzzed with a text from her mother. Mama wants to know if we're still on for dinner tonight. Absolutely. I'll have Helen make her favorite. They'd settled into a beautiful rhythm, balancing work and family, individual goals and shared dreams. It wasn't always easy. Brianna still had moments of insecurity, wondering if she truly belonged in Julian's world. Julian sometimes worked too much, forgetting to prioritize rest. They argued occasionally about small things like all couples do. But they always came back to love. Love and respect and the commitment they'd made to each other and to Daniel. That evening, with Diane at the table and Daniel in his high chair making a mess of his baby food, Brianna looked around at her family and felt overwhelming gratitude. She'd started this journey thinking she was just saving her mother's life through a business transaction. Instead, she'd found everything she'd ever wanted but never dared to dream of. A partner who valued her. A child who brought joy every single day. A mother who was healthy and present. A home filled with love and laughter. What are you thinking about? Julian asked, noticing her thoughtful expression. I'm thinking about how grateful I am. For all of this. For you. Brianna reached over to squeeze his hand. For us. Julian raised his glass. To us. To family. To love that leads the way. Everyone raised their glasses, even Daniel in his own special sippy cup. To love, Brianna echoed, her heart full to bursting. And in that moment, surrounded by everyone she loved, with her baby laughing and her mother healthy and her husband looking at her like she was his entire world, Brianna knew with absolute certainty that kindness, hope and love would always lead them home. The end. What would you have done in Brianna's situation? Would you have accepted Julian's help without hesitation, or would you have been more cautious? Share your thoughts in the comments and subscribe to see more heartwarming stories like this one. Your engagement helps us bring more inspiring content to readers who need hope and encouragement.